Welcome back, everyone. Megan here with a few more technical communication tips to help with your upcoming assignments. Objectives for this video, we're going to talk a little bit about using direct language in your writing and citing or giving credit to your sources. I chose these two topics for this week after looking at your two main upcoming assignments, the market competitive analysis and your SWOT analysis. For both of these, you will need to do research on local and world markets to identify your top competitors. Then you'll need to report on what you find using direct language and citations of the sources that you used. Tip number one is to use direct language. So I asked ChatGPT to give me an interesting or to give me a sentence on chemical engineering using flowery language. And this is what ChatGPT came up with. Clearly, it is not the type of language that you would want to use in a professional report. Direct writing, a couple of points about direct writing. The first is to get to the point. Might sound simple, but it can be challenging. One thing to remember is everything you've been taught about paragraph organization. So start with a topic sentence, use the acronym BLUF to help you, which is bottom line up front. Which means that you're going to start with your main point in that first sentence or two in your paragraph, and then add on with details and examples after that. So give evidence after you have already given that main point versus doing it the other way around. Also, you're going to want to think about vocabulary that you use. So like in my previous video, I talked about using concise and precise vocabulary. So not flowery or fancy. And you also want to consider your audience to choose the right vocabulary for that situation. And then this quote here comes from Fundamentals of Engineering Technology Communication. And they have a lot of great information about technical writing in there. So you want to sound natural and knowledgeable and use jargon only if it improves the quality of communication. A couple of examples from here as how to choose that right vocabulary. So moving away from that kind of flowery language and or fancy language and instead using more direct language. So for example, with ascertain, you could use determine or learn. Terminate, you could use end. Utilize, use. Employ, use. Endeavor, try. Herein, here. Procure, get. Rendered inoperative, failed. So really thinking about that language for the right situation. If we look at these two examples, which one does a better job of coming across direct? So in number one, it is tempting to write unnecessarily complex sentences in an attempt to elevate the perception of your expertise, but this can obscure the message being communicated. Or number two, writing unnecessarily complex sentences is tempting when you're trying to seem smart, but this can make your message less clear. So if you answered number two, you are correct. That one is just more clear and gets to the point quicker than number one. Tip number two has to do with citations and references. So what is a citation? That's when you use something from an outside source and you need to give credit from where you got it from in your text or report, whatever it is you're doing, also in speaking as well. I'm focusing more on writing here, but this applies as well to PowerPoints and speaking. So you need to give credit to that source. And then your references are a complete list of all your sources that you use in your report that come in the order in which you use them. Citations are kind of like a shortened version of a reference that is inside your text. And then references give that complete information about a source at the end. A couple of reasons why we use citations and references are to keep you away from plagiarism. So if you're using information, if you're using examples from another source, you have to give credit to who that came from. So that keeps you honest. But it also helps build credibility. So it shows that you have done your research and you have found credible and reliable information and sources and evidence to back up what you are talking about. So it helps, using that peer-reviewed information or information from other experts in your field builds credibility for you. Citation guidelines. So these come from your book that you're using in this course. So when in doubt, cite. So the number one question I would receive from my students when I was teaching writing is, how often do I need to cite? And I would always tell them, if you're not sure, cite it. So it's validating that your book also says this. Rule of thumb here is that including a citation at the end of a paragraph, so if you use a bunch of information even from the same source in that one paragraph and you only put a citation at the end of the paragraph, it usually is not enough. It needs to be clear to your reader what information came from each source. So if you make it clear by using language that connects ideas, aka transition words, that multiple sentences are from the same source, you can include just one citation after those sentences. So you have to make sure that it's clear to your reader that those sentences, let's say there's 3 sentences, that those 3 sentences all came from the same source. And you can do that by connecting them with transition words, things like that, or transitional phrases. Then you can just include one citation. But if it's not clear through the language that you use, you would want to use a citation after every sentence. And so number 2 is to avoid quotations and instead use your own words to paraphrase information. In technical communication, it is considered more professional and academic to paraphrase. The last tip that I have for you, or that comes from your book, is to cite your sources as you go. Make sure that you are tracking your sources as you go, and you're including citations as you write. If you haven't before, you might try out a citation tool like Zotero or EndNote. I know that the CSU library has some information on using Zotero, so you could check that out. A student example that comes from, this was in Canvas in the market competitive example number 1, where a student this group uses a citation after the sentence, around 34.5 million tons of hydrogen was consumed by ammonia production in 2018, and this consumption is projected to grow to 40 million tons by 2030. And notice then they have their citation in a bracket after that sentence. Now, if we look at that sentence, that is clearly not common knowledge. They clearly got that information from somewhere else, from a different source. And so they included a citation to show their reader, hey, this doesn't come from us. We found this here. Now, in the references, you would find the complete reference, the authors, the title, the year, all that good stuff as the second source listed in their references because of the number 2 after it. Just to reiterate that you have a lot of sources in Canvas. So use those sources. Use the AICHE style guide. So style guides, there are different style guides for different fields. And the purpose is to create consistency and professionalism for how people communicate within that field. So you want to be sure that you're using what other chemical engineers are using to communicate. Typically, your in-text citations will be numbers and brackets at the end of your sentences, like we just looked at in that example. And then your references page is after the conclusion and listed in order of appearance. Again, check out those examples that your instructor has for you in Canvas. Thank you, and I hope you found these tips helpful, and happy technical communicating.